alert. Your satellite feed has been interrupted.
Hey guys, Jacob here. I just want to give you guys a little insight, a little intro on this week's episode. I am so, I can't even bear to explain how excited I am. We got to interview Alex Greggs, better known as Alex G. Him and Rip Rock did a bunch of remixes for some of the first album. Then they got to work on, songs such as Space Cowboy, Digital Get Down, No Strings Attached. I'm just super excited. We actually talked to him just about him and JC living together. We talked about how he got started with the group and, we actually, funny enough, we actually got down to the specifics of what, equipment they used for each of the recordings that they did. And yeah, I'm just super excited for all this, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear it. But yeah, without further ado, here we go.
So today on the podcast, we have somebody that has had a major influence on the group sound and has also written some of their most beloved songs, No Strings Attached, Space Cowboy, Two of Us, the list goes on and on. NSYNC fans like us know him as Alex G, and we have him here today. Alex Greggs, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Loving the podcast, by the way. I heard it yesterday for the first time, and I was like, yeah, I got to hit these guys up.
Thank you so much for doing so.
That really means a lot to us because this is something where I think if you heard the show, Jacob has been a fan his entire life. And when we say a fan of NSYNC, it's like he's just a super fan. And just sort of by proxy, I'm his uncle. So growing up, we were playing these songs. I mean, I have vivid memories of him as a 2-year-old dancing to Space Cowboy and watching that stuff and all the stuff you put together. It's a lot of great family memories for us. So it's just so cool to be able to talk to you.
It's great. It's actually great hearing that because I usually don't talk to the fans or anything like that. But as a creator, as an artist, it feels good knowing that somebody got influenced by something I did. That's really why we do it, And to hear. It makes me feel old when it's like I was 2 years old when I heard your stuff, but yeah.
no, I get it.
And how long ago it was,
And that's the thing with YouTube and the way everything is with streaming. It's like it's all right there, so it doesn't seem like it's that long ago, does it?
No, it's not until I look at the dates and then I go, oh my God, that was 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it literally feels, I still talk to the guys and NSYNC comes up all the time and it always feels kind of current. It's not until you look at the date and go, fuck, 20 years ago,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's a testament to the work that you guys did and how it holds up still. And I know we had some fun about some of the stuff, especially Digital Get Down, our show's namesake and that kind of thing. But we love it so much. It's really it's ingrained in our lives. And just thank you so much for creating that and definitely even talking to us today about it. It's just so cool for us.
No problem.
But to get started, you mentioned about it's cool to see the influence that you might have had on people. I want to kind of start at the beginning and what got you into music? Who were some of your influences, sort of, getting started with your journey into music and everything like that?
Well, the NSYNC thing is actually a really funny story. So I started kind of professionally. When I mean professionally, I mean having stuff that came out on a major label, back in '94 was, I think, when I got my first Canadian platinum record for an artist I did up here in Canada. And, I was a hip hop kid, I was a computer nerd. Then I got turntables and doing all these, hip hop acts and remixes, and always loved electronic music. And I guess 97, a friend of mine who was an A&R at BMG Canada, but he hit me up and he goes, I just got moved to the New York BMG office, and we got this group NSYNC. They're doing well in Germany. Do you want to do remixes, dance remixes for the American market? And I was like, yeah, sure. And they, back then, they don't do it anymore. They send a little press packet with a photo of them and their whole story and stuff like that.
Yep.
And me and Brad Riprock, you know, we looked at the photo. We're like making fun of it. We hated boy band music. You know, it was like, screw that stuff. We're realists. We're the, you know. And so we did the remixes for Tearing Up My Heart and Drive Myself Crazy. And what was the other big one? Want You Back and stuff like that. And, you know, it did well for us. And, you know, it was fun to do. And then we get a call saying from BMG, do you want to go to Orlando and do a song with 95 South? And I was like, hell yeah. So while we were down there, they were also managed by Johnny Wright, who's, you know, obviously, you know, managed NSYNC as well. And Johnny was like, hey, the guys are in the other room. They want to meet you. They loved your remixes. And, you know, we're thinking maybe instead of remixing stuff on this new album that we're going to start, why don't you guys actually write and produce with the guys?
Wow.
And we thought, wow, yeah, cool. Meanwhile, we're kind of like laughing because we literally had a photo of them on a dartboard in our studio. You know, we were like, that's the one with the high voice, you know. Boy bands, they'll never, you know, and we were like, nah, it'll be okay. But, you know, Backstreet's got that market down and screw that. And so we met with JC and Justin the first day. And, you know, we're like, oh, as people, they're really cool. Then we started, you know, just jamming around and realized, fuck, these guys can actually sing and they're cool. So, you know, kind of broke down a wall. Came back to Canada, told everybody what we're working on. They're like, those guys can't sing, and now I'm defending them, right? I'm like, no, they're cool dudes and they can actually sing. You know, once you get past the whole boy band image thing, it's cool.
Right.
So we the very first thing we did with JC was actually we wrote a song for Wild Orchid. So that kind of got us started in the getting familiar with you know, JC and his writing style and stuff, and building a kind of camaraderie or whatever. And then then the next song we started was Space Cowboy. The track was done in a day. We did it down at Johnny Wright's studio, which was across the street from Transcon. And that came out pretty quick. And after that, Jive was like, okay, do some more. We'll put you in a big studio, which was Transcon, which we didn't want to do because there's some weird shit going on over there. Right. R. Kelly was over there working on his album. There's some weird stuff going on.
Man.
Plus, there was like a weird, you know, vibe with, you know, young guys interning there. And so me and Brad asked Johnny Wright, we said, look, instead of putting us in a hotel, let's rent a house. We'll fly our gear down here and it'll be cheaper, you know, than paying for a hotel. And then, so that's where our house came from on the credits. So we rented this house and we found it in like a newspaper or whatever. So, another funny story. Me and Brad were moving in our equipment. Joey Fatone's across the street, coming out of a house. He said, what are you guys doing? We said, we just rented this house. He goes, I live here. This is my parents' house. Right across the street. So Joey's like, great. Now I can have parties at your house. And when I'm done, I can just walk across the street and go home.
Right.
So it's good he was thinking ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Because he's got his parents there. He can't be, you know. And
right.
So move the gear in. Next day, knock at the door. It's JC. He says, I don't want to live at Lou's anymore. You know, if you guys got an extra room, I'll kick in on rent. Now, at this time, nobody's making any money. Like, me and Brad were making money from what we were doing, but it wasn't a lot of money. And the NSYNC guys, as we all know, had no money. Lou was taking all of it.
Right.
So, yeah, we said, okay, JC, come in. So it became the hub, the writing hub. And then Justin lived 2 minutes away. Chris lived, a couple minutes away. And I don't know where Lance lived. He just showed up. We don't know where he came from. But, and yeah, so we cut the vocal for Space Cowboy in the new house. The track we'd have already done, like I said, at Johnny's. And after that was Bring in the Noise, which Fight Ren had written. And Jive wanted, our sound on it. So we did that. And then after that, Digital Get Down, which Fight had written as well. But Jive wasn't happy with the production. Because that song was done like a year earlier, so it needed a kind of freshening up, right?
Wow.
And
is this at the time, because we've heard that they had done a whole album before what would become No Strings Attached. That was recorded before that had to in essence be scrapped. So are these songs that you're working on for that first that first batch of songs at this time? Or is this sort of after they had kind of cut their ties with... Is this like in that weird transition phase? Like, where are you guys at with that?
Yes. Right kind of when we moved into the house, like a week later was the big court case against Lou.
Right.
And the whole, the NSYNC name was up for debate on, so it was a weird time. Also at that time, Jive had come in and basically was like, we're taking, something happened, and I don't know exactly what, but there was an issue with BMG, and the guys were kind of up for grabs for a little bit. And Clive Calder, just walked in the room and said, I want a meeting with you guys, and pitched them, said, sign with us, yada yada. I got Backstreet. I know how to play you guys off each other. We can checkerboard releases. So things are not being released at the same time, and it made a lot of sense. And it showed me the genius of Clive Calder. Now, for people that don't know who Clive is, Clive was the owner of Jive Zomba, and just a brilliant businessman. So he thought, hey, owning McDonald's and Burger King is better than being in competition. So
Wow, it's true.
Yeah. So it made a lot of sense. So that's when they moved over to Jive, and the No Strings Attached album commenced. So when we did Space Cowboy and Digital Get Down, we knew they were going to go on the next record. We just didn't know what label it was going to be on. But we knew, they were definitely going to get picked up by somebody.
Yeah.
So we knew we were working on songs for an album. We just didn't know on which label it was going to be on. And actually there was a time where there was a couple weeks where we had to stop work because we couldn't do anything while they were on the BMG clock, because then BMG would have ownership of that. So we had to stop, and a couple of songs that we started, we had to stop, and they got scrapped. And then, okay, now I'm remembering correctly. Once the ink was dry on the Jive deal, that's when we started working on the stuff that would go on the No Strings Attached album. So I got my timing a bit different. Yeah.
I guess the question that I have, because there's a lot, there was like so much, and that's so awesome how you're taking us through everything. I wanted to ask about, to just backtrack just a little bit here, how you ended up kind of getting hooked up with Brad, and how your guys' partnership sort of formed.
So a friend of mine, there's a big DJ at the time, kind of like the Tiesto of Canada at the time in the 90s, this guy, Chris Shepard. And he put together a group called Love Inc., and Brad was part of it with a girl named Simone. And I just met Brad through a mutual friend of ours. And I got hired to work on Chris Shepard's mix CDs and his syndicated radio show, and he said, "I just started this band with this dude Brad. Can you come on board and help with production?" Because Brad was a good producer, but I was the more underground. I was into the new stuff at the time. It was like, speed garage and the drum and bass stuff, and Brad was a bit more pop oriented. So
Right.
I kind of did a ghost production on the Love Inc. record, which did really well. With a big hit in the UK called Superstar, was like #1, and in Canada went like double platinum. So this is really funny. So me and Brad kind of struck up this friendship while we were working on the Love Inc. stuff, and we didn't even, there wasn't a moment where we said, let's be partners. It just like organically we were like, yeah, let's just keep doing stuff.
Right.
So we're on tour with Love Inc., doing a cross Canada tour, while in between shows we're flying down to Orlando to work with 95 South and met JC and all that stuff. So we're flying back and forth. Come back, we did the NSYNC stuff, came back, did a second Love Inc. tour across Canada. During that tour, the NSYNC album gets released.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's about to get released. We're in the middle of a tour, and me and this Chris Shepard guy got into an argument on the tour bus, and he basically gave me the classic, "You'll never work in this town again." And I was like, fine, fuck it. So I left, hopped on a flight, came back to Toronto. Brad finished tour, went back down to Orlando, flew back to New York for the release date of this NSYNC record. And shit went nuts. It sold like 1.2 million the first day. And the end of the week it's like 2.4 million.
Yeah.
Fly back to Toronto, I bump into Chris Shepard, the guy who was like, "You'll never work in this town again." Bump into him, he's like, yeah, they didn't sing stuff. It's doing pretty well for you. And I'm like, yeah, fuck you, right? Like it was the ultimate like comeback, right?
Yeah.
The best kind of revenge, yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, that was a funny story. So it was Digital Get Down, Bringing the Noise, Space Cowboy. Oh, and No Strings Attached. And No Strings Attached, I think, was the last one that we did. And that was, I think it was Justin that came up with the title.
What was the, I guess you mentioned, like, when it came out, I worked in a CD store at the time.
Right.
And just the hysteria around, like, how many, like, albums that were sold. I remember selling in that first week, just me alone working at this place. I mean, what was your reaction, or like, when did you first, or how did you find out? Did somebody from the label call you? How did you find out about how well it was doing, and what was your guys' reaction?
It's Johnny Wright. We were all in a limo, which is cheesy enough, right? We're all in a limo, and Johnny Wright is saying, "Hey guys, congratulations! We just sold." This is on the day, the release day, or sorry, it's the next day. Yesterday we sold 1.2 million copies, and
Wow.
I looked at, everyone in the car, and I was like, "Is that good?" Because I had never sold that many records. Like I, it was just an astronomical number, and it was America. We were used to Canadian numbers, so
Sure.
1.2 million. We thought, oh, is that good? Is like, our big rock acts and stuff, is that what they do? And he's like, no, it's a record. It's like kind of a world record. Yeah, it kind of hit me like, oh, cool. It didn't blow me away because it didn't sink in yet. And at the end of the week, Johnny again, yeah, we sold 2.4. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. The numbers didn't mean anything because it was brand new.
Right.
And, but yeah, then things went real crazy, real fast. Everybody wants to be your friend. Other artists want to hang out with you. You're getting invited to all these events and stuff. And we were, at one point, we were still doing stuff in the studio. I don't know, the album had come out. Why were we in the studio? Oh, we were doing stuff for the live show, and also there's some commercial stuff and that I don't think ever came out. But basically, Jive would send me wherever I was. Jive would send the guys with me because you need to be in the studio to do this, and you can't be too far away. So at one point, I said I'm going home to Toronto to visit my parents. I said, "Well, we'll send the guys with you, so you can go in the studio." So I got to, travel and do all this stuff. I got to live the kind of the lifestyle vicariously through them and by being next to them. And since Chris didn't like to fly a whole lot, sometimes Chris would be missing out of the group while he was in transit. And I guess me and Chris somehow looked similar I had spiky hair. So we'd be going places, and fans would be rushing me, thinking I was Chris.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I got to live the life, I got
Yeah.
all the upsides and none of the downsides, But it was real nuts. Now JC and Justin were able to handle it easier and quicker because of them being on the Mickey Mouse Club. So they weren't too, they were familiar with kind of how these things, how to act and how this stuff happens.
Right.
But, getting, free stuff. Here's a Dreamcast, and, oh, you're with NSYNC? Here's a whole bunch of, what do you want? And at that time, the house that we rented in Florida, fans had figured out where it was. So now they're camping outside this house. And I forget who it was. Somebody, I think, it was JC, said something like, "Oh yeah, I like Reese's peanut butter cups." Just the off the cuff thing. Next day, we open up the front door. There's boxes of Reese's peanut, cup chocolates and cereal, and somebody even put containers of Reese's peanut butter ice cream, And I was like, hey, next time you're, doing an interview, tell them you want, you like cold hard cash, and maybe we'll open the door and there's stacks of cash, right? Because still none of the money had come in yet, right? So people in the industry, they don't get this, but if you have a hit song, it takes at least a year for those royalties and that money to come in, because it has to be accounted for and collected from all the different territories. So they're the biggest thing in the world. We're still living normal, lives and stuff. No sports cars and stuff like that. And, I remember me and JC went to Walmart to get some candles and stuff for the studio. Because we didn't want to stop writing. We just kept writing songs, even though the album was done. And he had a shirt on that said, as a joke, I think he was wearing an NSYNC shirt. And this lady comes up to us in Walmart. She was like, "Do you like NSYNC?" And he goes, "No, they think they suck." And she's like, and walked away, not realizing that who he was. Then we're walking out of Walmart to the car, and JC had this old Jeep Cherokee, and these girls run up. Oh my God, it's JC from NSYNC. And then they looked at the car we were getting into, and one girl goes, "That can't be him. He wouldn't be driving that piece of shit." And they just turned around and walked away.
Oh, these stories are so great.
That is awesome.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask about
it's hilarious,
I wanted to ask about the house, because you mentioned moving the gear and all that in. I wanted to ask about what type of gear, what were you guys recording on exactly? If you could get into the weeds on that, Jacob and I are both musicians, so we want to know all about that. As much of the gear stuff you could talk about.
So I had a G4. What's this G4? I had what was it? Centric. It was. I forget which Mac it was, but JC just got a free Mac G. It was a G3 laptop, the black one. The what did they call it? The executive or whatever. It was G3, and so it installed Logic on that because it was faster than our tower at the time, and so we were running off Logic off that, and I think we had like 1080, a Triton, MIDI modules, and a Mackie. The Mackie D8B just came out, their digital board, and then yeah, so we recorded in just into the headphone. It's not the headphone jack, but the mic, the line input on the laptop. So we rented a nice mic and ran it into the line input of the laptop, and that's where the vocals were cut. And
so you mean the main? Or you mean on the demos, or you mean just the main vocals that we hear?
The main vocals that you hear, 90% of them were recorded at the house. The only things that weren't recorded at the house were the harmonies, the background harmonies.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because Johnny,
where were those recorded at?
Johnny had just built a studio at his compound, and he had an SSL G series in there with Pro Tools. I think it was Pro Tools 5 because we were running an 888, and it was a TDM system. And the backgrounds were cut there. Now, originally we were going to recut the leads, and we recut the lead. Clive Calder had come down from New York to check up on us and listen. And across the board, everyone was like, there's something about the rough demo vocals that just sound good. So we just ended up using that. But all the backgrounds were cut at Johnny's.
And those are the ones just direct in, like you said. Those are the ones that made it on.
Yeah. And check this out. And then the mix, everything was done on that Mackie D8B, and with the Logic plugins, which the G3 couldn't handle that much. So we had to bounce everything to disk every time we applied like an ICQ or whatever. But the laptop didn't have a digital out. So we got a cable that went out the headphone jack and went into the DAT machine. So Space Cowboy, digital get down, bringing the noise and no strings attached, came out of the headphone jack of that laptop.
Wow.
Our
minds are like blown right now. Yeah. We're just like looking at each other like, what?
Right. And so that was supposed to be the demo, with the proper, the pre-mix. So the Jive said, great, here's a bag of money, go to LA, we got you in a real nice studio at, SSLJ, and we were like, yeah, fuck, we're going to dump everything to 224 2-inch machines and lock them and get that tape sound. And we spent like the whole day on Space Cowboy, which is the first one, and we thought, yeah, this is the shit. This is gonna sound amazing. And then we got in the car and we thought everything was great until we put up the demo on, and we were like, the house mix, this sounds better. So we sent them both to Jive. We Delta dashed them because back then MP3s was kind of new and the quality wasn't that good. And also Jive, a record label, had a problem with their computers that if an MP3 came in, it would get flagged as not spam, but their systems couldn't accept MP3s.
Mm-hmm.
So we Delta dashed, which was a thing that Delta had where you paid like $500 and they would put it on the next flight to New York. And then when it got to New York, there'd be a courier there to pick it up. So it was like same day delivery.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And Jive, we didn't tell them which one was which. We said, there's two mixes. We didn't tell them one was the house mix. We just basically kind of made it sound like we did two mixes in the big studio. We said, pick which one. And same thing across the board. They all like the home mix. So that's what went on the record. It was out of the headphone jack into a DAT machine. I mean, it went to mastering after, but mastering doesn't really change the sound much. It just kind of tweaks it a bit so all the songs in sequence sound consistent. That's really what the most important part of mastering is. It was crazy. That's why our songs didn't have that. There was a bit of a wideness that the Max Martin stuff had, that ours didn't. And that's why, because it was coming out of a headphone jack.
Well, the thing I wanted to ask is like like your songs have a certain like I think like they have like almost a cinematic quality. There's all sorts of sounds and like other things that are brought in that just keep it interesting and like even Digital Get Down, for instance, did you guys practically record all those sounds, or was there like a library? Again, like things are way different now, but like back then, like how did you sort of design the soundscapes that you guys put together?
No, that was all. Yeah, sound. I did all the sound design. You know, there wasn't really sample libraries back then, and all those like wobble basses and stuff I knew how to do from when I was doing drum and bass. You know, we were real scared at first because my problem is I when I'm doing the track and there's no vocal, I just fill it up, and then when vocals go on, then there's a little too much going on. So that's why there's a lot of crazy and random and hecticness in it, because I get bored if I'm looping fucking 8 bars forever. I just keep adding stuff. And so, you know, put in all this kind of drum and bass stuff and thought Jive was going to hate it. Like, when we sent in Digital to Get Down, I was like, they're going to laugh at us, but I think it sounds cool. And Clive, once again, was like, this sounds different. This is what we want. We don't want it to sound like Backstreet Boys. And we want NSYNC to have a bit more of a, not raw feel, but just a different, more progressive feel. Because they already had the pop shine with Max's stuff. So, you know, Clive was really, if it wasn't for Clive, me and Brad wouldn't have been on the record at all, because the other people at Jive were like, well, this doesn't sound like what pop should be. You know, you've got all these weird sounds and stuff going on, and I mean, and on the second record with the 2-step stuff, that was Clive as well, saying this is cool. So Clive was a huge part, and the A&R Steve Lunt was also very instrumental. Clive and Steve worked pretty much hand in hand, which I'm bringing that up for the later part of the conversation when we talk about why the Schizophrenic album went the direction it did.
Yeah, we definitely want to get there for sure. Because we definitely, you know, we want to talk about that for sure. I wanted to mention about the Digital Get Down specifically. Because we did kind of a lyric analysis of that, and just sort of like we're talking about
it. I listened to it.
And we were having fun with that.
I went and I listened to all your other podcasts.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate that. But like in the thing, and we were having fun with it, but like really, like, did anybody sort of like question the subject matter of that? Like, again, knowing that was one thing I'm just curious about. Again, knowing it was like a younger fan base, like, was there any conversation about that at all, or
none?
What was your first reaction to hearing it too?
When I don't listen to lyrics when I first hear a song. I just listen to the track and the melody, and I don't really intake the lyrics until we're mixing or you know, making changes and stuff, and then I'm like, oh, this song is about, like, I didn't know what the song was about till we were like halfway through it, and then I had heard the lyrics over and over when we were doing all these kind of like stutter edits and stuff. But no, there was never a time where the label or, you know, standards and practices of the music, you know, industry was like, you can't talk about this and this is not appropriate. And also it was a different time, right? Like nowadays everything gets picked apart. Like, well, is this going to offend, you know, is this going to make little girls go out and have sex before they're married? You know, it was pretty wide open, but yeah, nobody ever said, this is too, like, we knew it was a bit more risque than, you know, the other songs, but not in a way that we thought, like, yeah, this is real dirty, you know. It was more
right.
You know, and half of it was made up because, like you were saying in your podcast, back then, you know, there wasn't really, you had AOL Messenger and there wasn't, FaceTime and all this stuff. So a lot of it was, made up technology that we knew was going to get there. I shouldn't say we knew it was going to get there, because the lyric content was Fight Ren, and the guys, and Dave Nickel, and but from what I know of them and how it works, I don't think anybody was trying to make it, as X-rated as possible before it piqued anybody's interest. It was more just, this is what the future is probably going to be like, and wouldn't it be cool, Yeah, it was kind of a foreshadow of like, webcam sex, But,
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. It was like it was way ahead of its time in that regard. Like saying that they invented like stuff that we have on iPhones and everything now. When you get a track like that, like in the demo or whatever, what does that sound like, and how do you get it from that to the how rudimentary is the demo, and then how do you get it to where you brought it to, and like with everything you guys what we ended up hearing?
Well, since a lot of my work before that was remixing, so it was very natural for me to just get, we get stems, and so we get the vocal stems and the instrumental stems, and disregarded all the instrumental stuff, just kept the vocal, and just basically remixed the song as if we were just doing a remix. Yeah, the lyric content and the auto-tuning especially, which at the time, Fight did all the auto-tuning for that. And it was kind of the first time that I had heard harmonies done in auto-tune. Before that, it was more on a, like Cher and stuff like that. But this is the first time I had heard auto-tuned harmonies, and Fight's an incredible vocal arranger. So he auto-tune back then wasn't as easy as it is now to just go, this is the key, this is that. There was a lot of drawing and stuff going in it. And so I got this incredible a cappella that had all these great auto-tune harmonies and stuff. And right away I was like, this needs to be super futuristic. And just how it was talking about this technology that didn't exist, I thought it'd be cool to make the instruments kind of sound like, have the similar vibe. Like this is like futuristic sounds, like all those, like all those wobble basses and all that stuff. That's what dubstep was based off of. And
yeah,
it was, people kind of looked at us a little bit weird when that breakdown came in, and it was like doing different time signatures.
Right.
Now it's natural, but back then it was like, what? That's weird. It sounds good, but it sounded futuristic. And yeah, so that's how that came. I'm a computer geek, so I was like, I dove right into that one.
And what about the writing process? So like you'd said, like JC's living in the house with you guys. So can you take us through like what the writing process would be like? Are you sitting around with like acoustic guitars to get the basic song down, or are you doing it all in the studio, like, with the keyboards and with different sounds and everything? Or like, what was that process really like for you guys?
Well, it's different for each song. So I'll go through some, like, for instance, Space Cowboy, the track was made, like an 8-bar. It was just, first thing to do, just throw it up, put a beat on, and just start adding instruments. And JC was, on the couch behind, just coming up with some melodies, and there was some sort of space. He had the idea that he wanted to do a song called Space Cowboy. He just loved that title. So while the track is being built, he's kind of behind going, well, yeah, okay, so we'll make a chant section, and so he's, while the track is being made, he's kind of writing down lyrics and melody. And then once we got an arrangement done, we do what's called, there's two type of demo vocals. There's your guide and your ghost. So a lot of times before you write the lyrics, you know the melody you want. So you do a pass of literally him just going, dun, dun, you know, just making up words on the
Right.
spot. And when you're making up words on the spot, sometimes some cool ones came out. You know, ride, take it for a ride, space cowboy, if you want to fly. You know, so sometimes the shit that he just made up on the spot ended up staying because it sounded cool. And then, you know, JC would take it home and kind of refine the lyrics so it's not just a track of la 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 la. And
Right.
then we get back together. He sings it down in front of us, and you know, we give him our 2 cents or ideas and say, maybe this part you should go to this note or whatever. But JC's very super talented. And so when it came to the lyric and the top line melody, in the industry, a top line is basically the lyric and the melody. And so you got a track guy and then a top liner. And JC was a great top liner. So it was more just directing him when I thought maybe there was something that could be cool or something that I didn't like or I didn't jive, and maybe come up with an alternate. But, you know, that's how that one went. But sometimes, what song was it? No, just the two of us. Just the two of us I did the track, and JC wrote the lyric and melody in his car while he was waiting for his girlfriend to buy fabric or something. But a lot of time it starts with the track. But there was some. Now Justin, I think, worked differently. Justin, like with Gone and stuff. I know we're moving forward, but like with Gone and stuff, he writes that ahead of time, just him and a keyboard or a guitar, and you know, the stuff is built around that. But yeah, it's when you're not at the professional level like Max Martin, usually you do the track first and then you write the lyric and melody on top of that. But other writers like Max, or, you know, I mean, the list goes on. The big guys usually write the song on guitar sitting by themselves, like on a couch somewhere. And then the producer listens to it and says, all right, maybe we should speed it up and do this kind of track around it. But we worked backwards because, you know, me and Brad came from the remix world. So for us, it was, you know, lyric and melody wasn't important. It was all about the track to us, right? So,
Right.
yeah, for all our
think-
songs,
yeah.
it was pretty much track first and then lyric and melody after.
What's the involvement of the other members of the group? At what point do they come in? And like, this is a question that we were talking about recently. Are even all the guys on all the tracks, or what's the process then of building out the rest of the vocals and getting everybody else involved?
So they're on all the songs except for Gone. I think Gone was only Justin. Is that correct? From your memory? I don't think, I don't think JC did a verse on Gone. But all the other songs, they're all on. So it usually goes like, you've got like a lead writer, whether it's Justin or JC. The other guys are just as talented, but, you know, they knew the writing talent was in, you know, Justin and JC. Mm-hmm. So before when we just come up with the rough idea, the guys are there, and they come up with their 2 cents, like, man, I don't like that lyric, you know. So there's another pass where everyone's in the room and they want to make changes, and they come up with different melody. So the songs would sound totally different if the other guys didn't put in their 2 cents. Mm-hmm. You know, so they were definitely part of the creative process. And I know a lot of people think that, no, they just came and sang backgrounds. But no, it was always a very, everyone kind of had to agree. It had to be unanimous. Like, if somebody was like, that song fucking sucks, I'm not singing it, then the song wouldn't go, right? But yeah, no, everybody
We're-
brought a different vibe, and my personal regret is that we didn't get like Joey's. I always wanted to do one of the tunes with Joey doing one of the verses because he had such a really cool kind of Billy Joelish voice, but the
Yeah.
label was very adamant of keeping the two, Justin and JC, and Chris as well, because Chris had originally sang the leads on, I think, like Driving Myself Crazy and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Business Machine was like, no, we need to keep the focus on these two, not because the other guys aren't important or as talented, but it just gets kind of confusing, and this is it's corporate, right? And
Yeah.
I even to the point where I remember just the two of us, we had put Justin first. I might be wrong, but one of the songs that we did, we had Justin first and then JC doing the second verse. And Clive called her, he flew down again, and he said, "No, we gotta switch it up." Justin has,
Oh, wow.
I forget what order, but we basically had to switch it. And I was like, "Well, why?"
Mhm.
And the brilliance of this guy, he's like, because the girls, they want to be taken here, and then when they hear JC's voice, it makes them feel safe, and Justin gets them hot and sexy. So like, he had this whole, formula down. Now, Clive, this guy knew what he was talking about. This guy started jive with like Billy Ocean, old white South African guy. Started with Billy Ocean and, KRS-One, Jazzy Jeff, like some hip hop classic dudes, and so this guy knew what he was talking about. So we switched it up, but yeah, it was a very corporate decision on where the focus was going to be and who sang what verse first.
What was your reaction to the other songs when you heard it? The ones that you weren't involved with on the record, for No Strings Attached specifically. Did you have any favorites?
I fucking hated them at first because I knew they were better than mine. Like when Bye 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 came in, because Bye 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 was originally written for TLC, and
Was
they
it
turned
really?
What? It was?
Yeah, it was written for TLC,
Wow.
and
Did
they
not know
turned it
that.
down. So they recut. I think Max did the vocal, recut the vocal for a guy, and I heard it before the guys heard it. Our engineer
Oh, wow.
Mike Tucker at the time, got the DAT, and he's like, "This is what Max had sent for the single. He thinks it should be a single." And I'm like, "Well, it's Max. It probably is. Put it on. Let's hear it." And right away, I was like, "Fuck, that's a smash!" And then the guys came in and heard it, and everyone was like, "It's a smash." I think except for Lance. I think Lance was like,
Ooh.
"Meh, I don't like it." But, like I said before, everything kind of had to be unanimous. But Lance kind of looked around the room and saw that everyone was excited about it. So he's like, "I don't like it, but okay, cool, let's do it." And
Wow.
so yeah, when I would hear other people's stuff, it was like, and when I heard Bye Bye Bye, I was like, "That's just Jay-Z. Can I get a what?" I was like, that's the vibe. I actually did a mashup with Jay-Z over Bye Bye Bye, and it locks
Oh my
perfectly.
God.
I'm not saying he ripped it off, but it was that vibe, And I was like, only Max Martin could take a hip hop song from Jay-Z and get influenced by it and make a totally dope song that sounds different, but still captured that that
Right.
vibe. And yeah, so that was like, a knife in the thing, because we were thinking we're gonna get the single because our song's called No Strings Attached and the album's called No Strings Attached. Done. and then Bye 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 came in, and yeah, it was like, okay, yeah, that's definitely gonna be the single.
Oh, what about you mentioned before, like prepping some mixes for the tour?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that process and like what was all involved with sort of arranging those and how you'd approach that? What way you'd approach that differently?
So the musical director, this guy Kevin Antunes, is an amazing musical director. He used to work for Teddy Riley, and he's done for everyone, Janet Jackson, and he's with Madonna now. And so when they would do it live, they would use live instruments and play live, but there were certain sounds on the record that just couldn't be recreated live. And if they did, they would sound crappy. Like Digital Get Down with different sounds would have sounded cheesy. So we would have to sit with Kevin, the musical director, and say, okay, what's going to be live and what's going to be track? Because everything is locked to the computer. I think back then it was ADATs or DA88s there. Everything was being synced to. And also, the arrangements would get changed. Sometimes the keys would get changed, because so they blended together. And also, when you're on tour, singing every night, if there's one note that's really hard to hit, and you're doing it every night, it's safer to maybe drop the key down like one or two, so it's not that hard. And also, a lot of backgrounds and vocals had to be cut into for the live performances as a running backup in case somebody lost their voice or one of them was missing or whatever. So the guys would have hand signals. If somebody if Joey just lost his voice, hit a note, he'd give a hand signal to the musical director, and bang, the backup Joey vocal would be blended in, so there wasn't a missing harmony. And I think they only had to do that one time when Joey had injured himself when they were doing rehearsal, and so he wasn't able to sing and be in this kind of cast thing and jump around at the same time. So that, I think there was only one time where they had to use that. And
there was a thing we were talking about also the you did another like a
MTV
remix.
Awards,
yeah,
for the '99 with Britney Spears.
Oh yeah, we did that with Wade Robson.
Oh, really? Awesome. Yeah, I noticed that like the specifically the drums were different, like the beat, and they used that for their Pop Odyssey tour and stuff like that. How did that come about and everything?
That was me being competitive with Wade. Wade, are you familiar who Wade is?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, so Wade had done the first half with Britney, and he changed up the whole track. So it was, and then went into this kind of drama bass thing. And I think it was an afterthought that, hey, we should have NSYNC perform with her, because I think at first it was just going to be her, but then NSYNC blew up, so Jive was like, let's get them on stage together. So it would have sounded weird if Britney had this cool remix that was done by Wade, and Wade was choreographing all the dance moves, and then if it just went into the instrumental of Tearing Up Your Heart, it just would have brought the energy level down, and also Wade wouldn't be able to do his really cool start-stop style of choreography. So we were asked to do the same type of thing, remix it and stuff, and I thought, well, it's gonna be in New York, and I love Beastie Boys today, so that's why I did the kind of Paul Revere reversed thing and the going back to Cali LL Cool J thing, and adding in the sounds that Wade had used for this switch ups for the dances, so we incorporated that, and it was cool to do it and then like a week later being at the MTV Awards and watching it. You know, everyone's watching it, and I'm that guy in the back, like, who's looking around. And I'm like, hey, I did that. Hey, over here, girls, I did that. You know, it's like nobody knew. You know,
Right.
but so yeah, it was cool, and I still get like at least once a month somebody hitting me up asking me for a WAV file or an MP3 version of that of the 99 MTV version.
Mm-hmm. Moving ahead to a celebrity, I guess you kind of touched on this a little bit, and like, you know, the difference and the sound and everything, and how that evolved. Can you speak a little more to that? And then also, like, if there were any particular directives from the label, because this is a pretty, I mean, you're following up to the highest selling album of all time,
Right?
You know, that set records. So what I guess, you know, what was the directive from the label kind of going into it, and how did you guys tackle that?
Once again, Clive Calder said, just do whatever you want. And I thought, cool. So the first song that we did for Celebrity, first one we started was, well, they went to the UK, and Craig David was big at the time with that song Rewind, which is a 2-step song. And he came back and he's like, you gotta hear this fucking song. It's called Rewind, and it's this 2-step style, you know. And I loved it. And then I listened to all the other kind of 2-step stuff that was going on. So we did Up Against the Wall first, which is a 2-step style. And once again, most of the people at the label were like, what is this? This doesn't end. But Clive, being the worldly and visionary that he was, heard it and goes, yeah, this is a hot new style in the UK. So I don't feel like we're risking too much by putting a 2-step style track on an American record, because he knew that record, the Craig David record, was going to bleed into the States eventually. And so that was an easy sell. And then just the two of us, we did a third 2-step song called I have it. I'm sure it's floating around up there. It didn't make the record because it sounded very similar to just the two of us. And Clive, the direction from Jive was just do what you guys normally do. Just incorporate cool, different stuff because we know Max is going to bring the Max Martin sound to it. So we, you know, No Strings was a great album because there was a contrast between the two of us. There was other writers on it, but the two main guys, like, you know, we had 4 on No Strings, and Max, I don't know how many. So it was the album was a great contrast between our two sounds. And Max is very melodic and sparkly and perfect and, you know, pop perfection. And ours was like, fuck, we don't know what we're doing. This is like shit. We had a big record and now we get to do more. Great. So we'll just keep, you know, doing what we thought was cool. And surprisingly, you know, Jive was very cool with letting us go, you know, a little bit different. You know, in hindsight, it sounds like a regular pop stuff, but at the time it was very different sounding. No one in the States had really heard, you know, 2-step stuff. And we did one called Real World that didn't make it on the record, but we did this real Michael Jackson-y kind of. There was a few demos we went completely nuts, where it was like all vocoders and like just like, you know, bananas stuff that, you know, Jive was like, that's way over the, you know, over the top. But there wasn't like a you know, a guideline of, you know, you got to do this. It was more of like, just do what you guys did last time. Just do whatever you think is cool because it worked last time.
Yeah, in other words, if it's not broke, don't fix it. You guys killed it last time. So it's
Exactly.
another, I guess, speaking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right. Like you're not gonna go to Timberland or Max and be like, "Man, you gotta change it up." It's like no, it's like do what you're doing because it's working, and we're all making lots of money from it, and just don't change. It's only when the record doesn't sell that well that the next record they're like, "But don't do anything like you did on that record." On that last
Right.
record.
Well, was the writing process pretty much the same then? And like, what was the difference in recording as well? I mean, because like you said, the last one just like directly into the laptop. So what did you guys do differently this time around?
Well, for the celebrity record, we did it in a much nicer house. We had bought, me and Brad had bought a house in Winter Park, Florida, and JC bought a house 3 doors down on the same street. He still slept in our guest bedroom. So he just didn't like being alone. So it was the same kind of setup, and Justin would come over and so everyone would just come to hang out at the house and play SSX Tricky and and so money had come in at this point, right? So we're all going a bit nuts. I went to the music store and I'm like, I need like a TDM3 system with your fast and it wasn't flat screen monitors. I was like, I need 3 20-inch monitors, and I bought all this gear that like I always wanted, and stuff.
Yeah.
And then in 2005, I went ballistic on equipment. I bought everything I ever wanted, but for celebrity. Yeah, I went to the store and I was like, I got money. I'll take that. So it was inspiring to have all these new sounds. But we still were using that we still use that Mackie Digital. But now we went digitally out of the because we had the TDM system. So we went digital out of our 888s. And we went analog out of the 88s into the Mac because we bought some outboard like compressors and stuff like that. And but yeah, we set up the studio. I got a video of this. I'll send it to you. We set it up in a office in the house that had all these windows around it, and the neighbors were not too happy. But
Of course.
it was a nice, quiet neighborhood. But because it was
Sure,
in
yeah.
sync, they let us get away with no soundproofing,
Right.
just all night 8-bar loops. And so the writing was still the same. We did it in this, except the house wasn't rented. It was me and Brad's, and the same way we cut the backgrounds at Johnny's studio again, and some of the backgrounds were and leads were actually okay. So the leads and the backgrounds were both cut at a nicer studio because the before in the first house we had turned a closet into a vocal booth, and it just this vocal sound we were getting in this new place was not as good. So we were like, well, we'll just cut the real vocals on it, in a nice room. And so some of them were cut in at Battery in New York and Jive's studio, and some of them up here at Metalworks in Toronto. Yeah, I think it's those two, and some also at Johnny's studio, because now they were doing touring and radio shows and all this stuff. So sometimes it was like, well, which city are they in? Okay, we'll rent a studio and record some background. So there's some other random studios that I don't remember.
When you're doing all these different parts, like and you and Brad are producing, like who's coming up with the vocal arrangements and that type of thing? Like exactly, is that more JC doing, or are you guys doing that? Saying, hey, you're singing
vocal arrangement. That's all the guys. Whoever usually wrote the top line, the verses, would come up with the melody for their part, and then JC would sometimes cut some other harmonies just to fill it in as a demo, so we could send it to Jive to say, hey, should we finish the song? And when they would give the thumbs up, then we would replace the demo backgrounds and harmonies with the guys. But when that happened, the guys would do different harmonies because they're amazing with harmonies. So they would kind of blow it out, make them sound thicker and better and do some really cool change. Like, that's when the group mentality came in. Like, it was,
Yeah.
like I said, if the other guys didn't add their vocals or write their own harmony parts, it would have sounded totally different. And that's also why there is a consistency even with Max's songs, our songs, or Pharrell's song, and who else did on the record? This Atlanta guy. NSYNC had a consistent sound because they would arrange their own harmonies and vocals, so that kept the everything sounding like quote unquote NSYNC, and all that stuff they kind of learned from Robin Riley. Unfortunately passed away, but yeah, if it wasn't for her, she really taught them how to harmonize together and write harmonies together, and yeah.
I was gonna say, how much of that stuff? I mean, you must have. I mean, do you still have a ton of the demos and everything? Did you kind of? I mean, do you have like a whole archive of all this stuff? I mean, these different versions and different things that are going back and forth and unreleased stuff. I'm sure you have kind of a
Oh yeah,
an archive of these somewhere.
Yeah, I've got a ton of like songs that are like a minute long, and a lot of them have been leaked because we would send them to Jive, to say sometimes we would just do like a verse and a chorus, and we'd now we had CD burners, right? Big money time, big boys.
Right.
So
Yep,
we still had to Delta Dash it up to New York, and so. When people, at any label, you got people that are getting paid shit or they're interns or whatever. And when they leave, sometimes they walk with the CD of these demos and stuff and they resurface later. And, but yeah, I still have a bunch that nobody's heard and that I don't put them out there because like for instance, like there's a couple I'll play you guys, and I'm sure the guys won't care because they were just quick little things or whatever. But there are also other ones that I would never let anybody hear because they're not up to the standard of what they would want people to hear because when you do a first Ghost, you're not singing specific words. You're just going la 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 blah, blah, and this
Right.
So stuff like that I wouldn't release because it wouldn't be fair to the artist. They wouldn't want anyone to hear that part of the creative process. But I do have a lot of ones where it's just the first verse and a chorus, and that never got finished. And
Right.
Especially for the Celebrity album.
Is there a particular song that you were really fond of and like that didn't make the cut?
Yes. The song we did called Real World. You guys would have hated it. From what I when you're going through the Schizophrenic album. We did this song called Real World, and it was because we'd done Game Over and I wanted another one that was even more ridiculously electronic. And so it didn't have a lot of, your standard pop melodies. It was more of like a Michael Jackson kind of scream type of vocal. And I loved the song, and it was about Big Brother, basically. We used all these vocoders and stuff, and it was about the real... And it's funny because in retrospect... It's kind of like what the Matrix is, but we didn't. It literally just hit me now that a lot of the content of that song was kind of Matrix oriented, where the real world is, you can't hide anywhere. There's electric eyes watching your every move and everything you do. It was a little bit dark for NSYNC, but but I loved it, and it was so cool. But I understand why it didn't make the record. It just would have been like, what the fuck, right? Like it's, and especially when there were so many other good songs, you know. I mean, for each record, you're usually cutting double, so there was like 25 good contending songs. So to put one on there that didn't fit with the NSYNC sound, wouldn't have made sense. But at the time, I was like,
Right.
ah, man, you know. But Game Over, that was one that that was the one that I probably had the most control over, because I came up with the concept and a lot of the lyrics, and basically I got a Mac made machine and I loved the 8-bit sound, so I spent a whole night sampling all these video game sounds, and then I thought, wouldn't it be cool?
Do you remember what games?
Sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you remember what games you sampled?
I will never tell. But somebody did figure it out, and it was Namco, and we got sued for the Pac-Man sample.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Now, here's the funny part of it. The Pac-Man sound, I didn't actually sample from Pac-Man. It was in an Emu Planet Fat MIDI module. Do you remember that? It was like a purple module, and it had the Pac-Man sound in it. The whack up. So Namco hits us with a lawsuit saying, you know, use Pac-Man. And I said, well, don't come crying to me. Go to Emu. They made the box and that Pac-Man sound is in it. And I thought,
Right.
done. I dropped the mic kind of thing. And they came back and they were like, it's not the sound. It's the fact that you did it in the same pattern. The wacka, 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 wacka. Now, if we just went wacka one time, we would have been cool. But the fact that it went wacka, 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 that was considered a musical composition. So we had to pay. I'm not going to get into specifics because I'm pretty positive we had to sign an NDA on what the settlement was and how it came down. But
Sure.
But basically, it was, you know, they said, hey, you got this using the song. You're going to have to pay us something because it's basically a sample. So that was the only issue with that. But the other sounds that I sampled were from other video games, but I would sample like a note. So like in Galaga, where it went like, I would just take one of those notes, and at the time I was using Emu E4 sampler, and I would just pop it in the Emu and then play whatever melodies.
So did you have an Atari there, and like you actually did it from that, or like how did you actually?
So
I mean, you would have had to do that.
Do you know what MAME is? MAME.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got
emulators,
MAME on my Mac, and I downloaded all these ROMs. And while I'm playing the games, I'm hearing these cool sounds, and so just ran the output of the Mac into the sampler, and would just sample these notes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's how geeky I got. It's like, you know, my girlfriend's
I
like,
love
"What are you
it.
doing
I
playing
love
video
all
games?"
stuff.
I'm like, "No, I'm sampling sounds for the. Trust me, just leave me alone.
You're
I'm not
working.
playing
You're
video-
working. It's work. Yeah.
Get back to work." You know, we bought after we did digital Game Over, and I was telling you we did a song after called Real World. Between those two songs, I had purchased this thing called a SID station, and it was basically a SID chip from a Commodore 64 put into a box that had MIDI control.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah. But it was a bitch to program, and it had a dirty output. There's so much clock noise and stuff coming out of it. But in the mix, you couldn't really hear it, and no one ever heard it because the song never got released.
When the album, like when that album comes out and everything, obviously it's kind of like, you know, Michael Jackson following up Thriller. It's like, you know, it still was massively successful, but maybe didn't, you know, obviously match the success of its predecessor. But did you kind of realize, was it different this time around too, from when you didn't really have much context as to what was a successful album in the States? So what was your reaction to how Celebrity performed after it was released?
I knew it when the numbers came in. At first, we thought we all knew it was not going to do the same amount. We knew it was definitely going to sell less because, you know, the first one has always got the most. Some of the fans had started moving into different boy bands and stuff like that. So we knew there was definitely going to be a small drop. And I think the drop was I think Celebrity sold maybe 60 or 70% of what No Strings had done, which was reflected in my royalty statements. But for the guys, Celebrity was a bigger, and I'm talking economics here, not artistic. Economically, Celebrity was a bigger moneymaker because of the touring, right?
Yeah.
They moved up to the arenas and the Pop Odyssey tour. And, but I was pretty much in two things were going on. I was in a bubble of my own greatness, of I sold this many records and we're the number one, we can do whatever we want. And so I didn't listen to what was going on. And that's probably why the songs came out the same way they did. But yeah, because I don't know if you guys know this, but I worked on the Michael Jackson record, the Invincible record, in between those two records.
Yeah.
And so I spent 6 months with Michael and Rodney and so I knew I started spreading my wings a little bit on Celebrity, but I forgot what the original question was. What was the question?
Well, I was just asking about like how, you know, what happened after the release, like, of Celebrity, like what you covered, like what your reaction was. We did want to touch on the Michael's album there.
Yeah.
What songs were you involved in for that record?
Heartbreaker and Threatened, and I got grossly miscredited on there. I didn't get paid even. You know, they were like, "Well,
Was that because of the whole thing with Sony that went down?"
There was a $50,000 bill that, you know, Rodney was like, "Well, go to Sony, they'll pay it," and Sony was like, "Michael's got to pay it," and Michael was like, "Well, it's part of the production budget." But I was like, "I don't care. Fuck it. I'm making so much money with NSYNC. I just happy to be part of the Michael Jackson record and work with them." And then when the album came out and I got credited as digital editor, I was pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
You know.
Especially with not getting paid and all that too.
Yeah,
like,
then I was like, man, not only did I not get paid, I didn't get the proper credit.
How did that come about with Michael? Was that through Sony? Because Jive was a Sony label. Was it through those channels, or how did that come about?
It came about because of Digital Get Down. Michael had heard Digital Get Down, and Michael was working with Rodney Jerkins at the time, and Michael had called Rodney and said, I want the guy. Now, me and Brad, at the time of Celebrity, me and Brad had started kind of going in two different directions. So Michael had asked Rodney to get in touch with me and, you know, come in and bring my vibe into what Rodney was doing, because Rodney is an amazing producer and writer, but he did everything on an MPC, and I was doing everything in Logic, and I was doing all these like stutter edits and crazy programming, and Rodney had no clue on how to do that. So that's why I got brought in to kind of take what Rodney did and make the sounds different and do all these cool tricks and stuff like that. And yeah, like I got a version of Heartbreaker that sounds like, you know, BT stutter edits and crazy edits, like,
oh my god,
dude, it's just bananas. And then, you know, Rodney pulled like 90% of them out, and I was pissed. I was like, you know how long it took to do, you know, and then once again, in hindsight, I was a computer geek. I just wanted to, it's like me jerking off and showing off the whole world. I can do this better than everybody else. So when Rodney pulled out most of the tricks and stuff, you know, I was pissed off. But in retrospect, it was like that probably was what was best for the song, because the general public, when they hear crazy stutter edits and stuff like that, it sounds a bit nuts to them, especially to the Michael Jackson audience.
Yeah, and that time too, like 2001 or whatever, especially.
Yeah, and
And
that's actually that was the splitting point between me and Brad.
Hey guys, Jacob here again. Just cutting in to let you guys know that is actually the end of part 1 of our Alex Perez interview, and the next episode will be released next week. And we actually had like 3 hours of audio, from just talking to him about literally the bunch of stories he had, and you guys will hear next week's episode actually is about JC's solo album. What happened with Jive and why the album was the way that it was, and just a bunch of little extra stuff that I think you guys will appreciate. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to part 1, and we'll see you next time on the Digital Get Down.
Digital